Today, we talk about how you could take a community-centered approach to your fundraising with Sherry Nelson. Hi, and welcome to Driven's Fundraising Superheroes podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Shishente, and as an innovator in nonprofit technology, our team at Driven is determined to help you get the most out of your software. We're happy to help you with your donor, member, or volunteer management. So if you're looking to unlock the power of your data, please give us a visit at trustdriven.com. Community-centered fundraising is a fundraising model based on equity and social justice. It is about prioritizing the community over any individual organization and encourages mutual support between nonprofits. In our episode today, Sherry Nelson joins us to talk about how she takes a community-centered approach within her nonprofit and how to be mindful about the role capitalism plays within fundraising. Sherry is a St. Louis-based fundraising and communications professional with a master's degree focused in nonprofit management and an experience in operations, data analysis, campaign creation, major gifts, and leadership. We are really excited to have her on the show today. So thank you so much, Sherry, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
So can you start us off by kind of explaining what role capitalism plays in philanthropy? How does it impact the way that we fundraise?
Yeah, that's a big question. Really important. Obviously, it affects a lot. I think, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that capitalism exists and that it influences all that we do in our society, especially in the US. So, of course, it impacts philanthropy. And a lot of the focus in philanthropy is building relationships and things like that, but it is founded in finances and money as well, which is, I think, the most, one of the first ways that we think about capitalism is how it's related to money. So it's what keeps nonprofits going. It's the way that they exist here is that if we didn't have donations, if we weren't able to get those things, we would have to find other ways to exist. And so many of the funding sources get their finances and their funds through a capitalistic mindset, whether it be corporations or individuals that work within those. And I think that's a really scary thing for a lot of places to admit, but it's, and for some people, it's really hard to even imagine a world that would exist without that and how these spaces would continue to thrive and flourish without that existing. I think but it's an important thing for us to do, to be able to think about those possibilities so that we can start making that change.
Yeah, you kind of have to understand how it works before you can begin to unpack it and understand how it impacts your organization specifically.
Right.
Yeah, and as organizations, we often strategize on how we can get more donations. It's very donor motivated. But what are other factors nonprofits can consider when making these big decisions in their strategy?
Yeah, I think we need to think about bringing in the community and the people that are impacted the most, or who, quote unquote, the target population is, which maybe we should change those words also. But how their voices can be at the center and how they're involved in the decision-making process, instead of it being people in leadership or people who see a problem that maybe people that look like them created in the first place. I think a lot of it can be based in guilt, and that, especially for white folks who recognize the problems that are going on, they want to do something to change it, but maybe then that the impact of how they're doing it isn't lining up with the intention that they had. And so there might be some sort of toxic behaviors that haven't been thought through, involved in how the work is being done. So if we can bring people in who are the ones that are the most marginalized or the most impacted by the work that's being done, I think that can change a lot of the structure, and being able to just have open, honest, blunt conversations about a lot of the problems that exist, a lot of the wonderful things that are existing too, and the possibilities of places that have done the work, and being able to create healthy environments and be equitable and things like that. So I think that the first step is just acknowledging and being courageous and open to trying something different, and being not willing to fail, because I think that's going to come into it a lot, and being scared of failure is a part of capitalism too, because we think everything needs to have an output or some sort of financial what's the word?
Yeah, like a benefit that like
Yeah, exactly.
or
Right, productivity, yeah, and all of those things. So if we can just let people be and think and slow down and not look at the bottom line all the time, I think those would be great ways to be able to do that.
Yeah, you have to have, I guess, balance when it comes to everything, like taking into consideration that at the end of the day, like you are working to serve the community, but also appreciate that like you also have to fund everything. So you do have to like consider what your donors are doing. So do you have any tips on how to maintain that balance?
Woo!
Yeah, that's a big question.
Man, I don't know. It's hard. I think, yeah, finding that balance is really important. I would say reaching out to people who you admire who are also doing the work, because nobody can do it alone. I think a lot of what the themes are of like what we're talking about and how to move forward is being able to do the work together, because we can't, like, the system is set up so that if we work individually, we're not going to make it. And so in order to move forward, community is the answer, because that's what's been taken out of the equation for so long, and how capitalism has been thriving, and how oh my goodness, words are so hard. How there's been such a separation in differences of wealth. And so people want, okay, let me say this differently.
No worries.
I think theoretically as a society, we're ready to be able to, or we should get to the point where we can have the conversation about how to make wealth more equitable and throughout different generations, different classes, and things like that. But in order to do that, we have to come together and have frank conversations, instead of having this whole, well, the upper class is going to donate and serve to people who don't have that. And we're just going to feel better about it by funneling our money through nonprofits. And I think that a lot of people don't have that mindset. I will say that. I think that there are people who are definitely not donating so that they can get the tax write-off, or so that they can feel better about themselves. I think that a lot of folks really do intentionally want to be able to provide that support from the bottom of their heart, not transactionally or anything like that. But I think it takes a lot of work to get there and to understand how things are set up so that that's not usually the case.
Yeah, you always have to be cognizant of how you are not only making decisions, but communicating, because I've spoken before on community-based fundraising, and there's a big discussion on the language that you're using, because how you refer to people can have such an impact on how we think about the work that we're doing. So there's so many factors that go into it, and you just really have to think about how you are being mindful and making change within your organization and within your communication strategy.
Oh, for sure. Communication is such a big part of it too.
The first thing obviously you have to do whenever you're making change is to shift your mindset. So how can organizations shift their thinking to be more community focused? What are some things that they can show the people that they are serving that they are being represented in their decision-making process?
I think when it comes down to it, a lot of the organizations are serving the same people. It's just they're trying to focus on one part of the puzzle of what's missing in their lives or what the problem is there. So for us, where I work at Pianos for People, it looks like music, and then how that can translate to helping them with mental health or communication or in school or whatever that might be. But other people, the people that we serve are also not having resources to maybe good food outcomes, or they don't have great access to financial literacy or even equitable incomes. So, and there's a lot of other places that do that work too. So how can we as organizations come together to realize that the problem is greater than all of us, and we can like together do this work and create something that can help these people in a more holistic standpoint. And instead of coming at it like we're going to have to like find all the funds and figure out all the problems and solutions on our own, realizing that like we're not the only ones. And I think another big thing is switching our mindsets from scarcity to abundance, and knowing that there's not just like this small piece of pie out there that we all have to fight for, but there's like plenty, there's enough, and we can do it together. And that's a big mind shift of just realizing that there is more out there. And especially for nonprofits, we tend to overwork, underpay, and just try to get by as much as we can, because we are not for profits. And I think then we forget that we can also live in abundance, and take care of each other and find enough in plenty of different ways. I think it's literally about showing them that people that look like them, that people that represent them are on the board, are on the staff, and throughout the organization. And I think lately that there's been a lot of conversations about DEI and how places can put into place policies and things like that. But I think for a lot of places that can be just words, and there needs to be action plans and like tangible steps that are shown that work is being implemented, not just in this pocket of work that's being done in DEI, but that it's throughout the whole organization, and that people are being held accountable to doing that as well. Because people are used to just seeing those boxes checked and it not being actually something that is prioritized. So I think a big thing is creating a group of people to center that work, and then bringing everybody in the organization together to do that. I think, yeah, so those are big things. I think besides just bringing the people to the table, there also needs to be conversations and work done so that they're not harmed in the process, because like we can bring people to the table, and we should, but we don't want to have the same things happening where we are having biases being in place in the organization, or having certain judgments for people who don't have similar backgrounds to us. I think we need to be able to do those things. I don't necessarily have the perfect equation for how that is, but I think those are some steps.
Yeah, that's a really important step. Like representation is so crucial to all of those things, right? Like you mentioned it at the beginning of your response, that they need to see that they are being represented, and that means having maybe people who used your programs, or use the activities on the board, like you said, or actually part in the room making those decisions. So I think, representation is super important.
Yep.
And speaking of the importance of bringing voices into your organization, how crucial is it to collaborate with other organizations when it comes to community-centered fundraising? You mentioned kind of not thinking in a scarcity mindset, and I agree. So how can we take that first step?
I think that one thing in general that we think or that we do is we see other people's successes as our failures, and forget that we can succeed. We can both succeed, and we can succeed together. So instead of thinking of like, well, if I work with another organization, then that's going to take away some of our funds or some of the great work or recognition for us, being able to be leaders in the work that's being done and bringing in other people. I don't think that people who are doing this work well can get there by standing alone. I think that it takes that commitment, and it takes so much time, and a lot of times that can lead to more long-term results, but maybe short-term having to pause on some things. But I think that it's definitely worth it, and that just because one person has succeeded in getting a grant or getting a large gift or getting a new program off the ground doesn't mean that another organization can't do the same thing and that they can't celebrate that. It's not something where like one person's success is taken away by someone else's. It's like together. And I think that's the scarcity thing too. And how capitalism comes into play is that we aren't just people who get their worth based off productivity. We get to get our worth from just intrinsically having it, but also by like being involved with other people. And I think that there's such a great diversity in the work that's being done and humans in general, and getting to pick up people's brains and know that there's other solutions out there can improve us from where we start on our own.
Before we go today, I'd love to give you some space. Can you explain how people can support Pianos for People and the work that you're doing?
So Pianos for People is an organization based in St. Louis, Missouri, and we give free pianos and free piano lessons to anybody that wouldn't otherwise be able to have the access to it. So we try to break down those barriers so that it's not just upper class kids in the county that are getting to have transformational music in their lives every day, but so that anybody can have that access. So we can keep music education equitable, using the piano as a gateway to other things as well, like well-being, community, mental health, things like that. So ways people can support is donating a piano. We get them from anybody who is moving, had a family member pass away, students graduate and leave to go off to college, who don't live in the home anymore. So we get those, and then we take them directly to one of our students or community members who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford one. And we try to do that the day of, because there's so many other things involved, because pianos aren't transportable otherwise. You can't just pick it up like a guitar. So that's that part there. Spreading the word is always great as well. Just letting people know that we're here. You never know who you know that might be interested and want to know more about what we're doing. And of course, I wouldn't be a fundraising professional if I didn't say you can't also give a monetary gift, whether it be from a donor advised fund, stock, cash, check, whatever. We will take it all. Volunteering time is also great. We have a great group of teachers on board, about 12 of them, and they all have different specialties in different areas of music, whether it's jazz or theory, composition, things like that. But we're always looking for more people to get involved. So if someone is a teacher and wants to do a piano class one day, or come in once a week and help in one of our group classes, making sure the new beginners are on the right keys, or whatever it might be, that would be great as well. And just following us, coming to our events. We have different piano slams and recitals and things like that. So there's a way, however you want to be involved, to do it, and you can always reach out to me as well. Our website is pianosforpeople.org, and thanks for learning about us and hearing.
Thank you again, Sherry, for joining me on the show. For those listening, you can connect with Sherry on LinkedIn or visit her organization, Pianos for People, by visiting the links in our description box. And if you'd like to learn more about Driven, listen to past podcast episodes, or join our newsletter and get our content delivered straight to your inbox at the end of every month, you can give us a visit at trustdriven.com. We would love to have you join the Driven family. Thank you so much for listening to the Fundraising Superheroes podcast, and we'll see you next episode.